So it's becoming really popular for some reason to kind of turn on Jordan Peterson. This is a popular trend that I'm seeing online in a lot of right-wing circles, particularly right-wing circles that are starting to embrace, a kind of a soft fascism, neo-fascism, a lot of this woke right stuff. For example, I've done interviews and videos on that, and I've written extensively about that for the Christian Post if you want to go check that out. It's becoming popular to tear down Jordan Peterson and to scapegoat Jordan Peterson as this bad person, as a sellout, as someone who's paid off, as someone who's a plant, as someone who's delusional and clinically insane and these types of things. And I don't know why, other than they're ultimately rejecting a lot of the ideas that he's been proposing for years, that being personal responsibility, cleaning up your room, not buying into grievance studies, which is exactly what the woke right, like the woke left, is dependent on. And it's very bizarre to watch, isn't it? It's very bizarre to watch. We're going to go ahead and watch this clip of someone doing just that on Jason Whitlock's podcast. Jason Whitlock is a contributor over at the Blaze TV. He has on here Kevin Donahue, who's the founder of Stealth Executive. I have no idea what the heck that even is. Nonetheless, we're going to go ahead and watch this clip and hear what they have to say.
Jordan Peterson is a professor, a university professor. That's his entire career. I mean, what do we breed at the university level? Certainly not Christianity. Quite the opposite. You can read articles in Newsweek about how Jordan Peterson's entire home was decorated in propaganda from the Soviet communist era, posters of Lenin, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I would say the guy, to me, seems like a card-carrying communist. Quite the opposite of a Christian.
Okay. Jordan Peterson is not a product of academia, and that's like his claim to fame. That's how we got popular. That's how we got notoriety and recognized by so many people, is by his bold stance against the corruption of academia, against the corruption of the woke medical establishment in Canada. He even lost his medical license for doing so. So to act like he's just this product of communist, leftist, egalitarian academia is absurd. But instead, we have people like this kind of trying to rewrite history about this guy, as if he didn't stand up against the things he stood up against, as if he didn't make the courageous stand over the things he made a courageous stand over. And then to call him a card-carrying communist. Jordan Peterson has been rebuking communist ideology for years, for decades, literally. You can find old lectures of him doing this. You can find new podcasts from even today of him doing this. There's hours and hours and hours of exhaustive content that you can find with a click of a mouse of Jordan Peterson rebuking communism, rebuking postmodernism, rebuking many aspects of modernity that embrace these egalitarian ideals that are not conservative. Jordan Peterson has been standing against those things, and rightfully so, for decades, and he hasn't changed his message. And so to act like he's a product of academia and he's a card-carrying communist is so out of touch with reality. I don't really know if I have words for it. Do you know what I mean?
He's an atheist. But if you go back to the beginning, and I remember early on, he rose to fame because he was on a Canadian news station where he said men aren't women. And it got him, people were rallying around him like, thank you, someone speaking the truth. And he almost got fired from his job for saying this. He wouldn't address men as women or women as men. But then early on,
you mean for standing up against egalitarian communism, the very thing that you accused him of believing in? That is that why that's so? Do you see the contradiction here in the rewriting of history and the gaslighting that's happening about this new narrative about Jordan Peterson's bad and he's a plant and he's a communist? It's just like,
tried to hire Jordan when he was a YouTube star, and then we were referred to his agents at.
You tried to hire it. So he's a card-carrying communist and a product of academia against everything that this guy allegedly stands against. But he tried to hire Jordan Peterson back in the day. Interesting.
A company that I was advising at the time.
Gotcha.
And we reached out to him directly, and then we were pointed to his agent at CAA. And this is where I go back to your point about being a Psy-op and a classic plant. He was planted by the mainstream or by someone to lead.
Okay, if you're going to claim someone's a plant, you should at least have some tangible evidence, and maybe a name, maybe an institution specifically that directly planted them. Right? But just saying he was planted by the mainstream means quite literally nothing. It means he doesn't actually have any information to back up anything he's saying, Kevin Donahue and Jason Whitlock. It's total horse crap to say he's a plant. He's a classic plant. To promote what exactly? Personal responsibility and taking ownership of your life and self-sacrificial love and care for others, which is exactly the message that Jordan Peterson has been harping on for decades. Wow, what a horrible plant that must be, right? To push those horrible ideas.
I would say, young men astray. You know, a classic...
Lead them astray to what? To what? To the things I just mentioned, to cleaning up their room and having an ordered life and treating people with respect and telling the truth, being honest, standing up straight, having some decency in your life, not turning to drugs and alcohol as coping mechanisms, these types of basic truths that have been lost in society, not embracing egalitarian communism or grievance studies in order to, and not playing the victim, in other words, not blaming everyone and everything else in society and systems for your own personal problems. Like, what? Do you know what I mean?
Man or a classic charlatan will say things that are true, right? If we want to look at a biblical perspective, even Satan quoted the Bible, right? Like, a con man will say what's true. And his book, 12 Rules for Life, had sort of common sense thing. It was nothing profound. And then
it was nothing profound, even though it changed the lives of thousands and thousands of people, specifically young men, who are, you could make an argument, disenfranchised in society today, who are told by the radical left that they're useless and that they're problems, that they have nothing valuable to contribute to society, and that they aren't leaders and that they have nothing competent that they can bring to the table. Jordan Peterson has given people tools, put tools in their toolbox to take back their own lives and to be not only better themselves, but ultimately to serve and help other people, which is the ultimate goal of bettering yourself. And Jordan Peterson has been preaching that message on repeat for so long. Quite the opposite of the institutions, quite the opposite of the so-called mainstream that this guy is saying Jordan Peterson is a plant of. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm confused.
And then they started this thing called the intellectual dark web. I mean, how many of those guys were Christian? Right? Not many.
The intellectual dark web was the group of people I mentioned who were removed from institutions for rejecting leftism, for not playing along with egalitarianism, for not playing along with radical feminism and queer theory and critical race theory and all of this stuff. That's what it was, if you guys remember. And that's what it still is. These guys are still around. People like Eric Weinstein and Brett Weinstein and Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro and whatever, all of these dudes. Jordan or Joe Rogan was you could say part of that. Like, this is such a detachment from reality. This newfound script about Jordan Peterson. I don't understand why they're doing this, other than they're trying to turn people against the foundational ideas that Jordan Peterson is known for presenting, which goes in direct opposition to embracing critical consciousness and critical theory and these new grievance studies that the right is now embracing in order to push their political goals and aims. And of course, someone like Jordan Peterson stands in direct opposition to that. So you have to assassinate Jordan Peterson's character, assassinate his integrity, rewrite his history in order to do that.
Man, we're straight.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's an interesting discussion to look at and to see where he comes from. His background as a university professor, he's not, and that's why I think even in this situation, he's out of position. I mean, this is like a linebacker trying to play quarterback. When you're a university professor, what you say is law. What you say is true. The students aren't allowed to talk back. He's in a situation here where you have smart kids, young men, telling him what to think, and he's not used to that situation. He's a psychiatrist where he sits and listens and tells people what to do, or he's a university professor where if you don't do what he says, you don't pass his class. But let's just go back to the classic plant, right?
So if they're talking about that recent interview Jordan Peterson did on Jubilee, where it was like the Jordan, one Christian verse 20 atheists is what the video was originally entitled, and then they changed it to Jordan Peterson verse 20 atheists, which is a better title because Jordan Peterson himself has never claimed to be a Christian, then I can see the point there that Jordan Peterson probably didn't do the best job there. There's a lot of things he said there, myself as a Christian, that I would disagree with. I think they could have picked someone way better for that debate, a way better Christian apologist for that debate. Someone like William Lane Craig, for example, would have been awesome for that discussion. But of course, Jordan Peterson's the big household name. He gets the clicks, he gets the views. So that's probably why they picked him. But nonetheless, for someone who's not a Christian, for Jordan Peterson to stand up and try at least his best with the beliefs that he has to argue for a theistic perspective amidst 20 atheists, I can give him credit for that. I think he's getting a lot more negative press over this than he really deserves, frankly. And even nonetheless, you could not like this debate and think he didn't do that great of a job and disagree with things he said, while also not rewriting history about him and lying about him and lying about what he believes about things and lying about the ways in which he's helped people and actually led people back to church. Isn't that the irony? I mean, how many stories are there of young men who said, I started going back to church because of Jordan Peterson? I'm one of them, to be frank. How many stories are there of young men who have reclaimed their faith because of the lessons that Jordan Peterson taught? Because he encourages people to start reading their Bibles again. He encourages people to go back to church, to turn back to their faith. This is a repeated message that Jordan Peterson has delivered. It just shows that, like, this whole narrative that they're spinning about him just isn't true.
Almost like a Stephen A. Smith, for example. If you listen to Jordan Peterson, he was on Joe Rogan's show, and he tells this fantastical story about drinking apple cider and then going into hallucinations and not able to sleep for 25 days. And I'm like, is that his 6-inch screw in his knee? And he goes, you don't understand. I couldn't sleep for 25 days. Like, what are you talking about, man? And Joe Rogan is just kind of holding his tongue. You could tell he's embarrassed for this guy's lie. And you're like, what are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense. But I think
it's not accurate. Go and watch the video for yourself. Go and watch the podcast. It's just not accurate.
I think his position was to lead, quote unquote, white middle class conservative Christian men off a cliff, like Pied Piper, right? Lead them into nothingness, because
lead them into nothingness. Again, Jordan Peterson has been encouraging young men to take back responsibility of their life, to go to church, to reclaim their faith, and to not embrace nihilism, communism, egalitarianism, or grievance studies. What cliff is he leading men off of exactly?
The biggest risk to society are organized young men. It's the biggest risk. So if all of a sudden there was this big push towards Christianity and conservatism and nationalism, that's a big threat to the system.
Jordan Peterson, I'll say this, has done more to help young men not go off a cliff than these two guys, Kevin Donahue and Jason Whitlock, have done in multiple lifetimes of theirs combined if they had them. Why would ask these two men, what have you done? What have you done, Jason Whitlock, to help young men other than complain on the internet? What have you done? This guy, Kevin Donahue, frankly, no idea who he is. I haven't heard of him. I'm sure most young men haven't heard of him. What have you done that even pales in comparison to what Jordan Peterson has done for young men?
Right? To the system that we have right now. So to me, he's always been that way. I mean, I think there was 1.2 where he was addicted to some sort of benzos or something, whatever you call them. And he didn't get help in Canada.
Oh, here we go. Jordan Peterson's a drug addict narrative. I keep seeing this repeated online as well. It's just, guys, go look at what happened. Go look at the history. Go watch the videos where he talked about this, where Michaela talked about this, where his wife has talked about this. This just isn't true. Okay?
Help in America. He went to Russia, to some specialized addiction place, which do whatever you got to do to get over addiction. But I have to remind people, not only is he not a Christian, he's also not an American. So just be careful who your leaders are. And every single movement, whether it's for good or for bad, needs some sort of figurehead to lead that movement. And I think what we're seeing now is the downfall of the figurehead of a sort of a phony, conservative, phony intellectual even, perhaps.
It's not a downfall. It's one thing if someone does something that would warrant a downfall, right? Or is actually a grifter or a liar or whatever they're trying to paint him as. It's another thing if you are claiming there's a downfall of a person because you're lying about him. Do you know what I mean? That's not what he's describing is not what's happening with Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is being unfairly attacked. He's being lied about. His history is being rewritten, and he's being painted into a villain that he's never been and that he isn't right now. That's what's happening. That's not a downfall of a leader of a movement. Okay? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know. I'm getting agitated. It's just like, and here's the thing. We should be allowed to criticize people, to disagree with them, to stand against them when they say certain things. There's plenty of things that Jordan Peterson says that I don't agree with, myself being a Bible-believing, born-again Christian. But we don't have to lie about someone, okay? We shouldn't have to lie about someone, I should say, in order to rebuke things that they say or do. And in fact, if you have to lie about them in order to promote a certain agenda, or to promote a certain narrative about them, to lead and to push a certain agenda, then the narrative probably isn't true and it doesn't hold much weight, because if it were just true on its own two legs, you wouldn't have to lie. And so the fact that they have to lie and rewrite the history about him says, oh, the narrative they're spinning about him probably isn't true. That's at least what I conclude. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.